give you my card as trustee, so if you ever can't reach one,
Oh,
you can
here it is.
reach me. I think that's it. Score. Here you go. I spend a lot of time on the internet.
Give it a few more minutes. Start someone to come in. And you are expecting a 6 today. Oh, yeah.
Hi, guys. Welcome.
We've already got them. Great. Thank you.
I'm standing in for Mark tonight. I'm Sandy Hammerly.
Hi, Sandy.
Sarah Mark's not
Joel.
around.
I'm Sean.
Hi, Sean. And, you know, if ever Mark's not around and you need another trustee, you've got my contact information, so.
Sorry. Don't worry. I think we're on Miss Patricia. We'll give her a couple more minutes.
That's what you should do.
I'll go back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, very optimistic. Perfect. Yeah, so.
That looks like a good coffee. Tea. Oh, I could use it. I don't care.
Chai. I think I gave you that. That's why you can reach me if you ever need to.
Great.
I mean, you have most of my contact information.
I can find you, I you can try.
Yeah.
And are you in a sense of euphoria since Sunday?
I am.
Well, who wouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, John. Who would be?
I was thinking of you on Sunday.
All right, on that note, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Open Space Advisory Committee meeting for February 8th, 2017. Go ahead and just have everyone introduce themselves. I'm Ken Lish, Chair. Let's go down the line.
Sean Samuelson, member.
Joel White, member. Andy Quat, member.
Ryan, do you want to? Ryan Welch, member.
Tricia Dunham, Vice Chair.
Tracy Collar, member.
Allison James, Town Staff Liaison.
And Sandy Hammerly, Town Trustee, here for Mark Laces, who is having fun in Disney World right now, so.
All right. So we have no public, so no public comment tonight. Dig right into our first agenda item, which is the discussion of a ProStack and OSAC merger. Just a little bit of background on this. After our meeting last month, Patrick Hammer reached out to Peter Bottomley, the ProStack chair, and myself to see if we'd be interested in meeting with him and town manager Matt Magley to discuss this. We met, and this idea has kind of been thrown around by several different parties for a while, but never really pursued. I think beyond just that historical context, that over the past year or so, there's probably been a greater overlap between the two committees than there has been in the past, and understandably, that's putting more of a strain on staff resources. There's a lot that they have to do now that is duplicative for both committees. I think looking at this from a pure efficiency standpoint, the idea is that if there was one committee, that would make things much more effective from a town staff side of things. So we'll kind of open it up. I can start with my thoughts about where we want to go. This isn't something that's being dictated to us that this must happen. This is just purely a first step in seeing if there's any interest. My first thought is that I totally get it. There's definitely an overlap in some of the responsibilities now, especially since OSAC adopted a new mission and goals, which added more to our plate and definitely caused a little bit of duplication in what we do and what ProStack does. After thinking about it over the past month, I've had a growing concern that putting every responsibility that each group currently has into a single committee might be too much, and that we won't necessarily be able to delve into each topic in the level of detail that we currently are, and we won't be able to do as good of a service for the town because we'll be so much more limited in the time that we can dedicate to each topic, since there'll be so much more. This is magnified even more. I don't know if anybody watched the last town board meeting. ProStack is going to be working over the next year on helping the town identify its direction relating to an indoor community space. So there's a big project on ProStack's plate. We as a committee have talked about re-looking at the open space plan, which I don't think is going to be nearly as large as what ProStack is doing, but those are two large plans or projects that I think one committee will be overtaxed with, in addition to everything we normally do. My then thought is, okay, if we want to try to get rid of this extra burden on staff, then it might make sense to take a step backward, look at everything that ProStack and OSAC does, and maybe try to realign and delineate more specifically what each group should do. That way we have less overlap. And again, just purely my thoughts, in looking at it, I think there's kind of there's two broad categories that all of our responsibilities can kind of be broken up into. One is kind of a parks, a recreation, and amenities type group that focuses on specific areas, specific structures, the amenities of everything. The other is open space and connecting open space throughout the town. So just in the way that I thought might make the most sense is I envisioned something that would look like a Parks, Rec, and Amenities Advisory Committee, and then like an Open Space and Trails Advisory Committee. So that's everything I put my thought into over the past month. Open it up to everybody else and whatever you guys think.
I'd agree. I understand the need for efficiency, but I think combining the committees actually limits town resident involvement. You have 18 slots currently that people have taken the time to apply for, interview for, and then give their time. So I think one of the things of combining the groups then tells 9 residents that their input on a committee level is no longer needed, and I'm not sure that that's the best direction that the town wants to take. I can appreciate that there is overlap in some spaces, but I agree that I think that that overlap can be dealt with by clear direction from the board as to what duties are what, and each charter can be looked at and determined if the duties that a committee's currently doing should remain part of their group or if some should be shifted. And I guess that could be said for all the committees on the town, but I would be more in favor of that than, for the same reasons, in the sense of combining them. I also think that both groups have very robust work plans and have, looked at areas of improving, or areas that they could advise the town on, and I think that both work plans are good. But I can definitely appreciate that for staff, I'm not sure that that's the best use of staff to be doing duplicative efforts for two committees. So I'd agree with that.
So there has been some history behind why we haven't been able to clearly delineate between our two committees. I know this has come up in the past. In the 3+ years I've been on this committee, I think that was one of the first things I brought up, is why isn't there a clear delineation between the two committees? Are we a subcommittee of them? What's our real purpose at that point, which is why we put in place the goals and mission statement, et cetera, to better differentiate ourselves from ProStack. I'm also in favor of keeping them separate. I believe we do have clearer focus. This is the reason why I joined OSAC instead of ProStack. If I wanted to be on Parks and Rec, I would have done that, but I wanted to focus on open space. That's a big part of why people live in Superior, is the open space, not necessarily, that we have all these amenities. I mean, it's great that we do. It's fantastic. But my focus was to be on open space. And so I think, again, it gets back to the board deciding, more or less, do we want to clearly separate the two entities, where Parks and Rec is clearly manicured park space and programmed, sports or whatever, and then open space. Now, there are trails within that, so there's still going to be overlap, but I have no problem with the current ProStack if they want to focus on interior trails. That's fine. With our feedback, I think that's been also a problem, is we have not had great communication until recently between our two committees. But I think that now that we are communicating better, it's just a matter of checking in with them. But I do believe that having two separate committees and a clearer focus is the way to go.
And I think something that would be important if there was a transition of any kind is as you said, people signed up for the committee they signed up for a specific reason, and whether or not the committee gets put together into just one giant committee, or whether responsibilities get deviated differently than they are now, I think it would be important to give people the opportunity to voice their desire to switch committees if all of a sudden what they chose to join a committee for is no longer under the purview of that committee. So I think it's it might be, even though it looks like it might not be like a big change, and that there would still be similarities between maybe like the new committees and what our committees currently are. I think it ultimately might be something where we need to almost look at it as new committees and say, yeah, we're all here. There's certainly you won't have to reapply or anything like that. But if anybody has a strong desire to switch to stay aligned with their passions, then I think that needs to be.
Well, is the issue that they just want everyone under one umbrella so that you'd still have two subcommittees with under one main committee? I'm trying to figure out what the structure would even look like, because you're right, it's just too big if you combine the two.
Right, and I'm a little confused by that being my primary question, is when I saw ProStack speak about this topic, there was already conversation that open space would have some type of subcommittee should it go under a ProStack umbrella. There was already, even before anything's been set, discussion about open space being a subcommittee, which seems a little strange to me, that you would already have another subcommittee, so what really would be the point? And I am kind of losing direction as to the point of joining them. I understand we don't ever want to waste town resources or staff resources. That is completely ridiculous. But when they're adding another new committee that just got added a couple months ago, it's a little confusing to me. So I think it would be really helpful to have direction from the board as to their priorities.
And I think hearing their priorities would definitely be important in the conversation. Where we are now is just so preliminary. It was just feeling the waters. So none of that's been discussed or decided. In the conversation that I had with the town manager, Patrick Hammer, and Peter Bottomley, the idea was, I mean, at that point in time, ProStack was still sitting at, I think, 5 people on their committee. And the idea was, okay, it might be easier to merge at that point, and we might be able to have a bigger committee. Since then, they're now fully staffed. They've had everybody, all their spots appointed now. So how we would merge this would definitely be an issue we'd have to figure out. The ideas of subcommittees, again, we didn't get into that specifically, whether it's needed. I mean, that's completely fine, or whether the entire committee can touch base on all of it. I think that's all important stuff that will need to be kind of sussed out throughout that conversation.
I do think the merging would take care of itself. I think just a hunch, but I think people would naturally find where they want to be or not be involved anymore.
Mm-hmm. The only concern is that, I mean, as of right now, you're only allowed to have 9 on each, and if you didn't have all those people, like enough people want to drop off, then what do we do? And would we want to make an exception, that sort of thing?
Well, the first off, even if it's 9 on each, you can't combine them at that number, because then you're at an even and you can't even vote. Like you can't have an odd vote, so that would be the first, thing. But I think, the same things can be handled with just clear direction from the board.
Yeah.
About what.
I think that's the real thing that we need is, I mean, we know it's something that's out there, but hearing direction from the board, I think it's the board's decision ultimately. So, I mean, we're here to advise them and do what we can to help make their lives easier and help with the town in whatever way we can. But yeah, ultimately, whatever direction they'd like to go, it's their call.
One thing that the group might want to consider is that the 2 groups could merge, and then people, as they drop off, it would naturally, like you said, kind of go back to the numbers. That could be a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to the point of, subcommittees or, what if I have an interest in a certain topic, kind of like OSAC has been doing now, and when you have the work plan and certain people are interested in certain items, then those people take on those items. It's not necessarily a subcommittee per se, but maybe a work group from the committee as a whole, and working in what they're interested on like you do now.
Yeah.
So from a newbie's point of view, I mean, when I saw the work plan this year and we went through that, it seemed like it was pretty aggressive. Yeah. And then those were the comments that this is really aggressive and there's a lot on here. Do we think that's because we're doing more ProStack type of things? I mean, it seemed more to be open space and trail related, which I know trails is a mix, but there was a lot going on in that. I mean, more than we probably could do. And then the only other thing I'll add is that 17 people, 15 people on a committee is a lot. You lose efficiency from just trying to communicate with that many people. So, if that's a proposal, that's just something to consider, that it just makes making decisions as a group that much harder with that big of a group.
I'll add, basically echo Ryan's sentiments. It's my thing exactly. There we go, sorry. Our work plan, I felt, was building over the years. I mean, I've been on the committee 2.5 years, and each year I've been on it, our work plan has gotten bigger and bigger, and I think that's great. I mean, to me, it shows our committee is moving in a direction, trying to do more things. We have great representation at our meetings. We're doing a lot of stuff in the community, and, agree with everyone that, it's a board decision. It seems to me that the real overlap comes into the trails aspect. And I think some simple direction on who owns trails, or maybe even collaboration between the 2 groups, and 30 minutes a month where we have, some subset of our group work with a subset of their group and then discuss at a larger audience in your monthly meeting where there are overlaps. I don't see any reason that groups in this small of a town can't work well together over something that we all have vested interest in.
I've got one comment in watching the tape from ProStack. I think they mentioned at least 25% of our work is overlapped with their work, which I wasn't, maybe even more. So, I mean, it seems to me that would be like an obvious first step is to eliminate that, because then you could both be very efficient. I agree there's an aggressive plan this year, but if we eliminate all of the overlap, and then even if they're going to revisit this down the road, because I think if first you eliminate the overlap and then focus on the plan that we've got.
Yep. I think I agree with all of that. I think the hard part is how do you eliminate the overlap? Where does it go? In which direction? Because I think both committees see that it would fall under their purview and want to make sure that they can provide input to the town board on it. And I also completely agree about our increasingly aggressive work plans, and I think that's great, and that's what I'm afraid we'll lose if we turn into one committee, because we'll have so much that will now have to be worked on that is generally under ProStack that now we're not putting as much of our effort towards open space stuff, which I think a lot of us here are passionate about and why we're on the open space committee. So I guess unless anybody else has any other comments or questions, the way it was left is that after we had the opportunity to discuss it, since ProStack already did discuss it at their last meeting, I would reach back out to Matt, Patrick, and Peter, and we would circle back around and meet and figure out, based off everybody's input, what the next best steps might be, which it almost sounds like might be trying to get some type of direction from the board or understanding from other parties. I mean, we've put our 2 cents out there, ProStack's put their 2 cents out there, so I think it's time to hear from the other directions. So, okay. Well, as that develops, I'll make sure to keep everybody in the loop and let you guys know what happens. Next agenda item is finalizing our joint meeting agenda topics with the town board. I think we did a pretty good job of it last month. I'll go ahead and read off what we developed last month, and we can decide whether or not we want to change anything, delete anything, add anything. But our first priority was talk to them about the open space acquisition plan and discuss that we're trying to get that updated, make sure that there's an understanding from there that we're just reevaluating all of our priorities, making sure that everything is still on the plan and nothing's fallen through the cracks. The second topic was priority for open space acquisition, and that kind of was a subset of that first topic, and it was trying to find out from the board how what type of priority they put on actually trying to continue to buy more land, whether we're sitting and waiting for, say, our number 1 topic, our number 3 target, level 3 to open up, or whether if something else opened up, we'd want to jump on that. I think it's just trying to get a feel from the board where they stand. Our third topic was, again, the Coal Creek corridor. We were going to discuss that kind of from a holistic standpoint. Thus far, it's only been discussed from a standpoint of looking at it as a area on the east side of McCaslin. Last month, we talked about how it's also something we would want to focus on the west side as well, and how it would relate to the Rogers Farm development if that moves forward. So I think it was trying to get their feedback on anything there. The fifth topic we had was the Rocky Mountain Greenway. And the sixth topic was the National Trails Day and the education outreach that we do, and just discussing with them how that's grown and how that's still a priority for us, and just helping educate some of the newer board members that we have. So, opening up anything that anybody else wants to add, delete.
Oh, Shan, you missed Shan.
Sorry.
That was 4. I was saying, we went from 3 to 5.
Yep, I apologize. I completely skipped that bullet. So, yeah, Coal Creek was number 3. The Shan Trailhead is number 4. And the Rocky Mountain Greenway is number 5. And the Shan Trailhead is more or less talking about what the next steps are. There's $10,000 allocated in this year's budget for exploring a trailhead there. So trying to get an idea of what that means, timelines, and next steps.
The other thing on the Shan was asking the board so June is the targeted date that the structure could be removed, and then getting a feel from the board if they're looking to do that. I mean, that just means that it can be removed after that. That was the agreement. Is the board looking at that to be removed this year, or is that something they're looking at next year?
I think there's an amount in the budget for the demolition.
Yeah, okay.
And the Rocky Mountain Greenway, was that just their thoughts and any further new information they may have?
I'm trying to remember exactly what the conversation topic's going to be. I mean, I know it was something that we wanted on there to make sure that they knew it was something we're still incredibly interested in and that we'd be keeping our tabs on.
I think it was twofold. One, to get an update from Sandy, who's been very plugged in with it, and then 2, to gauge what the board's level of interest with our connections to the Rocky Mountain Greenway would be. Like, for instance, at one point there was proposed alignment would come down McCaslin on the east side.
One thing the group might want to think about is last year we had 3 items for discussion, and I don't know how that meeting felt for you, but just something to consider.
Yeah, it was a rushed meeting for sure. I think each of those items was probably a little bit bigger because we were proposing the actual expedited trail construction plan, and I think it was a shorter meeting last year too, if I'm recalling. I don't remember, but yeah, I think we should be prepared to not be able to discuss all of these. So the order of these is important.
So I think, we have 6 items listed, but I think we can combine the first and second one, open space acquisition, and then our priority. I think those are really one thing. I think Coal Creek corridor can possibly on the west side can be wrapped in with the Shan Trailhead, because that's all one area and they should all interrelate with one another. So that could be just one also. That'd be the second one. The third, Rocky Mountain Greenway, I think is important, should be a separate thing. If anything were to fall off, it would be the education outreach at this point. And if we had time, we could touch on it. But
I find that one to be just more an FYI that's
Yeah.
coming up in June. And
yeah, we're increasing. We had these things last year. We had great turnout. We have starting out again this year with good, hopefully continued good attendantship.
Mm-hmm. I think that makes sense. So what I've got then is topic 1 is the open space acquisition plan and priority for open space acquisition. Number 2 is the Shan Trailhead and West Coal Creek corridor. Number 3 is the Rocky Mountain Greenway. Number 4 is National Trails Day and education outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's good with that?
Good.
Is there any more prep we should do for that? Do we just come and bring it up, or?
So the way it typically works is we all show up, they put out the tables, there's dinner available for everyone, so everyone gets a plate, and it's more or less sitting around eating dinner, and we'll kind of walk through these one by one, and it's the opportunity for the board members to ask us questions about it and for us to explain our thoughts and where we are with each of it. So there's nothing for us to prepare really. It's just more come with your thoughts and be ready to interact.
And I'll make an agenda and give it to make sure that the board gets the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody is going to attend and has any type of dietary wants, they can email me directly, and I can make sure that that's handled for you.
Yep.
I let Ken know, but I I have to travel that week for work, so I'm going to have to give it a miss, so hopefully others can attend.
Just a reminder, the date of it is February 27th from 5:30 to 6:45. Is that a Monday, I believe? Yeah, it's right before the board meeting. So, and again, everybody is encouraged to come if you can. I think last year we only had 3 people, but if we could get everybody, as many people as possible, except if you're on work, then that'd be great.
And if everybody can let me know that you'll be coming, that would be great too, because then I can help organize the.
I think I'm coming.
I was going to say, if we just want to go down the line, if you know, Trace.
I plan to. It's always work and traffic depending, but I'm trying to shoot for it. If you want to, do you want me to let you know, like last minute, if I can't get there? You can just give me your cell and I'll.
Do you want to raise a hands of who thinks they'll be there? Just real quick. Is that
Yeah.
the easiest?
Let's do it that way. All right.
Okay, great. I need one extra.
You said it's a 1 hour?
It is from
It's
5.
an hour and 15.
Yeah, 5:30 to 6:45. Hour and 15.
I do think you're right, Ken, that it was a little shorter last year. Or maybe it just felt that way, that people, it felt, okay, yeah.
It was a sprint to talk about everything. I remember that.
Because everyone is eating dinner, so you have to
Trying to
account
eat
for
dinner.
Yeah.
the getting of food and whatever. So that might be why it's a little longer this year.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Moving on to the next agenda topic. This is a follow-on from our last meeting. This is discussing a cleanup event or any other type of dog waste outreach that we might want to do. Where we left it last month is that we'd reach out to ProStack and RCAC to see if they would have any interest in doing some type of joint event or joint project. ProStack discussed it briefly at their last meeting, and it didn't necessarily sound like they had interest, but I've exchanged additional emails with Peter and Ezzy Snell, the chair of RCAC, and there's been additional conversations, so ProStack might discuss it next week at their meeting, and RCAC will discuss it at their meeting tomorrow night. So we don't yet know for sure whether they want to have any type of joint project. What I think might help is if we can more solidify what would be our optimal direction forward. Where we had landed last week is that we absolutely wanted to move forward with some type of outreach. We didn't necessarily get into the details of how we would do it. My personal opinion is that just shooting something out over the CAC is easily ignored and doesn't necessarily hit the target population. I think the best way to reach out to the target population, which is dog owners, is adding another placard to the dog waste bag receptacles that are all throughout the town. So that would be my initial thought. If anybody wants to think about that, and in the meantime, Allison, if we want to pull up your.
What'd you do?
They're over here.
Allison.
Oh,
Sorry.
Because Ken, I agree with you. When I looked at the signs recently, you see there on there, it says town ordinance says you will pick up after your dog. The other town ordinance says they should be on leash, but there's nothing that talks about all these health issues that are coming up. So
The
there's plenty
damage
of
that it
room
does, yeah.
on those posts to put some other placard. I mean, I don't know how expensive that would be, but it sure would be right in your face when you're going to grab one of those bags for your dog.
Yeah.
I saw an article just this week that.
did you just watch me type?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is one of my favorite campaigns. So Jeffco's Sheriff Office started this in 2011. And these signs are all over the country. It's not just Jeffco, but that's our nearest neighbor. And it's basically, there is no poop fairy. It's kind of like an ad campaign. These are the signs, the marketing signs that are put up in various places. And, you know, it would be interesting that, you know, if the group decided to do a pickup, a trash and dog waste pickup, that we could say, we're going to be the poop fairy this one time, and then from now on, that's it, you know. Another thing to think about is incentivizing your volunteers if you decide to go with that program. And one of the ideas one of the communities did that I was reading about was they bought artificial dog waste and they fluorescently painted it. And if while people were volunteering, and you know, they hid it in different places, and then as people were picking up, like kids were out there, you know, adults were out there, and they would find this prize, you know, and then they could turn that in at the end of the session and receive some type of prize. And it just seemed like it would be really fun, so it wouldn't be just, you know, they could be, it's like an Easter egg hunt in a way, you know. So that was just one of the campaigns that I found online that I thought might be kind of interesting.
I definitely think, I agree adding to the signs or putting up additional signs like this. I did, after our last meeting, went and checked the newsletter, and it does have on the left-hand side,
Yep.
you know, and I went out to that link. So I think even if we don't get the signs up around town, if we could get a couple of placards that would be at Arbor Day and be at, you know, Chili Fest and be at 4th of July, like if we got a poster board size that are at least up that could show whether it's this one or the one that you link to on the newsletter that says, you know, hey, this is what it's doing.
You could also do a YouTube spot, put it up on Facebook, send it out through various media.
Yep.
You know, somebody can be our
You could dress as the fairy at 4th of July.
to go up on stage. I just thought it was fun, you know.
Well, no, but I think it's, I mean, and I think it's a good time to do it in the sense that, like you said, Joel, it's something I'm seeing on the news from various communities are struggling with this problem across the state, and they've done a number of clips about it in different places, so.
And we do have the town ordinance signs in different areas. I don't think they're as catchy. You know, like you might remember.
Well, I think they
something.
do two different things. I mean, there's
Right.
been like behavioral economics studies done that people don't necessarily respond well to being told you're doing wrong, which is here's the law, you're clearly not within it, or educating to give them an incentive like, oh man, I'm it's not just I'm outside the law, I'm actually doing harm by doing this.
I mean, it's definitely a problem that's coming up in a lot of communities. I mean, Boulder's had a very public battle with it. And then as we started talking about this, I remembered seeing it just this week that there's an article on 9 News about dog waste causing extremely high E. coli readings in the waterways and stuff in Jefferson County. So
I saw that.
It's not from the geese? I mean, we have a tremendous amount of goose poop around.
I'm sure there is
town, too.
some, but I mean, the headline on this one clearly says dog poop causing ridiculous E. coli levels.
Our volunteers picked up 500 pounds of dog waste in one area, in that specific area.
Wow.
Jefferson County?
And I
Yeah.
think though from the geese though, because they eat grass, that it's a different animal than the dogs.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if people are like, well, if geese, you know, they just leave their stuff all around, why can't I just leave my dog just doing one?
And I think that's part of the
that's the-
education program that we
Yeah.
need to.
So what's the difference between goose poop and dog poop? Well,
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
it's a biodegradability
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is the
It is, and
difference.
I just want to plug that Ashley has done a good job on the wildlife walks of educating people on the difference between when with coyote scat versus dog scat and how long it takes. So, I mean, there is a difference between what they eat and how long it takes to
I
get
do-
back into the area.
Yeah. I do think that we're coming upon the time where it would be most effective if we do come up with a plan of action. You know, I like the thought of putting up, you know, something like this. I don't know, you know, with placards and stuff, how much printing and overhead there is with that, but I mean, I've seen some, more temporary solutions, which are basically laminated 8.5 by 11 sheets. They won't withstand a full season, but I think as the weather starts to turn around here and people are out more often, if you can get them to kind of start.
So
Their
Boulder
habits.
actually did that. They actually had like laminated cardboard, and they had like a contest where the children drew pictures, and they came up with some catchy little slogan for that. And I was like, oh, isn't that cute? And they read the blurbs like, oh, right. And they're all around the playgrounds and ball fields and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I do like this house, and I saw it like 15 years ago somewhere, I don't know where, and it's been in my head, and my husband and I say it to each other ever since. So it's very catchy.
I know it is. I know. I saw it a long time ago too, the same thing.
So I guess my biggest question is, clearly it's going to use some resources to put the placards out, whether it's adding them to the existing stations or putting them in other places. Allison, is that something that we can ask you guys on staff to look at and look at how much that would cost if it's too expensive to put it on like each of those stations, whether you guys have a recommendation for only putting placards at maybe the most heavily trafficked thoroughfares with dogs?
I think it could just be a recommendation from the group and see what interest that generates to, from the board to
give you guys
decide
direction.
to go forward. And, other types of media is also helpful. We do have, like you said, we have a lot of, information in the newsletters and things, and it doesn't always, people may not have noticed it, but it's been in there since January of last year, So maybe signs and maybe like a YouTube video. It doesn't mean that the group would have to do it, but we do have, resources that could probably pull something like that together.
Okay.
I was just going to throw an idea at you,
Yeah.
having just spent a couple of months picking up campaign signs and moving them all over the town of Superior. Those Coroplast signs that we do for the campaign, they are relatively inexpensive in the big scheme of things. I mean, I think mine, I had 100 and they cost me about $300, maybe $400. Maybe it might be worth considering making signs like that. They are mobile. You can move them anywhere around your trails or something like that, and anybody could move them out when they're walking. So, I agree, it's a big problem in the community, and I like the idea of the campaign. As one trustee, I think it's a great idea.
Yep, and I know there was something that you guys discussed at your last meeting. I know that was more concentrated towards Dogways on Williams Field, but I've heard it from a lot of different directions.
There was one other item about this that I saw online that I thought was an interesting concept, and I don't know if it's the right fit for the town or not, but they had taken water-soluble fluorescent paint and just in one area marked all of the dog waste. And then say if it was done before the volunteer pickup, that, it was a very visual demonstration of how much was actually in like a 100, 200 square foot area or whatever it is. And then if the volunteer project went ahead, it could all be cleaned up. But it was water soluble, so when it rained, it would fade.
That would make an interesting visual, too, for whatever media you could do.
Yeah,
The
taking a
before
picture
and
of that.
after, and then the trash cans full of it or something like that. And even if you did it just in the dog park, I think it would be, just walking around there, how much waste you see inside there could be interesting.
The only part with doing it with the dog park, though, is I think that actually is contracted to be picked up, right? So if people do, I thought it was contracted within the dog park to be picked up, or is it just the trash that's picked up?
Well, there is a biodegradable station at the dog park where people could deposit their waste. Periodically, certain areas have been contracted to be picked up.
Okay. I don't have a dog, so I wasn't sure if that was an ongoing.
Well, I walked around it recently, and it doesn't look like it, because it's
Okay.
pretty littered around the perimeter.
Okay.
Yeah. I think maybe once a year is when I've heard. I think Patrick mentioned that once a year they'll contract somebody when it gets really bad. But
It's extra, it's not.
yeah, it should be everybody's own responsibility. So I don't think we necessarily need to wait on hearing back from RCAC and ProStack to make this type of recommendation to the board, so we can move forward with an educational campaign. Once we hear back from them, we can certainly work with them to help work with town staff to kind of form what this campaign might be. And then even in addition to that, if we do decide to have a event, that's something we could work with them on.
Allison, I got an email that our volunteer coordinator position, the person was moving on. Is that a position they're filling again, or?
I would assume so. I don't have really
Okay.
any information at this time specifically on it.
There's not a new person yet.
Okay.
No.
Because my only thought was, because I've done other things, you know, a couple of us did bike path, the bike trail and stuff, and I think if we do an event, we would want that position filled.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I'm thinking of is she had contacts or, you know, going after kids who were getting service hours for school or service hours for, you know, older scouts and things like that, that it would be helpful to be connected in if we do an event, that at least then we could guarantee some people
The
there.
position that oversaw that position, who had had some of these same responsibilities prior to that position being created, is handling all of that work.
That's great.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I think what makes sense is to make a recommendation tonight then to the board to more or less ask staff to start exploring ways of doing outreach opportunities.
Yeah, and education.
Yeah, educational outreach opportunities about the damage that abandoned dog waste can do. That way we can still give input, but it'll allow staff to start looking at more specific costs and resources that'll be needed. It can help us make a much better decision for what to do. And then we'll hold off on deciding on an event or anything similar to an event after we hear from ProStack and RCAC. So while we were talking, I just quickly wrote down a very brief and easy recommendation that we could include for tonight. Make suggestions and changes as I go through. So OSAC recommends that the town board ask staff to explore outreach opportunities educating residents on the damage of abandoned dog waste. Do you want to see if we have changes first, and then we can read it all out loud? Or
Sure.
Okay, just in case. Are there any changes?
Say it again.
Where'd it go? There it is. OSAC recommends that the town board ask town staff to explore outreach opportunities to educate residents on the damage of abandoned dog waste. Easy and gets to the heart of what we were looking at.
Love it.
Love it, yeah.
All right. Allison, you ready?
Go.
OSAC recommends that the town board ask town staff to explore outreach opportunities to educate residents on the damage of abandoned dog waste.
Yeah. You want that one more time?
Residents on the.
Damage of abandoned dog waste. I'm sure we could sit here and kind of tweak it nice, but
No.
it gets to the point.
It is what it is.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a motion to make that recommendation as written?
I motion we make this recommendation to the board.
I second.
All right. Any discussion first? All right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous. All right. Okay, so I think we're good on that topic, and we'll circle back one more time next month after we've heard from ProStack and RCAC. So that brings us to the updates and look-aheads. Grab the map. So the town was approached by one of the scout troops with a desire to seed plant milkweed somewhere in the town to support the healthy colonization of monarch butterflies. This is a national effort. It's a big program. Town staff looked into it and ensured that it isn't a
Noxious weed.
well, it is a noxious weed. However, only in really large quantities, and the research says that it doesn't taste very good. So, chances are that dogs aren't going to chow down on it to the point that they'll consume those large quantities to do damage. However, taking that into consideration still, the areas that were looked at tried to avoid or anywhere near the dog park or where there would be high volumes of dogs. So where the thumbs up was ultimately given to the scout troop was over here. So just zooming out, Colton and Indiana. And here's the basketball court for frame of reference. Scout troops were given a thumbs up to plant in over here and over here. So they'll be proceeding with that in the future. The other citizen science going on was the bird count topic that we have been discussing the past couple months. As we had agreed to, I reached out to the 4th and 5th grade teachers at Superior Elementary and El Dorado K through 8, as well as the leaders of the local scout troops. I did not receive a response from anybody, so
I will just say I happened to be at El Dorado PTO last week, and they wouldn't respond anything like that because they're so protective of doing these things from outside sources. Has to be approved at a district level. So they would just ignore it unless it came through the district level. So I don't think there's enough time to go through the district
agreed
level at this point, but if we see how this goes and see if we see some citizens who did it, if we want to do it next year, I suggest we reach out to the district in the fall to plan for it to go out in February.
And we should be able to see how much participation there was in our area, because you can get down into the local levels to see how many people reported the birds in their area. So we'll be able to see if there was participation and if it's something we want to move forward with in the future.
And having a scout, I'll just say last month was Pinewood Derby month, so there was a lot of intensity around Pinewood Derby if you've ever been a scout or a parent of a scout.
Yeah.
And I've been sending out the CACs, trying to stagger them with our other programs. So I don't know if everybody's noticed the CACs on that, how the group felt about that, because I find myself sending one out on like a Tuesday and then the other one out on a Friday.
I think it's fine. I don't see anything wrong with it.
I've seen them. They look good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I
it's
like
just
them.
kind of, I mean, the CAC is the way it is. Some people are like, it's a fire hose of information, and then, so it's really user dependent on how people accept how much they see or don't.
Yeah. I think the one thing that we heard during this whole election cycle was that the more outreach, the better. That's what I heard throughout. So until we hear otherwise, I think the amount that we're doing, that you're putting out, is fine. Next topic on updates and look-aheads, the open space summary report update. So also just to give everybody a heads up, we've called it the open space acquisition plan, more or less because the idea is acquiring property, and that was just kind of a generic topic we threw onto it. This real specific name of the report we're updating is the open space summary report. So we probably shouldn't have been, but we've been using those terms interchangeably. But we're talking about that initial report. So anyway, at our last meeting, we created a small subgroup of people to kind of spend a little bit extra time on this and try to bring a plan together. So Patricia, Ryan, and I all met earlier this week. We've been going through the summary report throughout the month. We all had a chance to go through it and look at it. The two main things that we kind of decided upon was the format of what we'd want to do with this next report. If you have looked at the original one, it's very dense, very, very data heavy. The idea is that we don't need to add nearly as much background and history. And if I'm mischaracterizing anything, please. But what we could do is have like an intro, add some methodology, and then we jump right into the population of the open space targets and the results of our rankings. And then we could have a appendix that actually shows the raw data of how we rated things. And then we'd have an appendix that documented the history of all of the properties that had at one time or another been looked at and documented where they are now. So whether they had been acquired, whether they are now developed. I mean, more or less just closing the loop on everything to make sure we have a final complete document. And then the next step we also had was discussing a timeline and how we would want to proceed with this process. So between this meeting and our next OSAC meeting, the three of us again would just do one final sweep of all the properties that are yet to be developed in town to make sure that we're not missing anything and that nothing's falling through the cracks. Then at our next meeting, we'll present all of these properties to the group as a whole, make sure everybody understands which properties we'll be looking at, and then describing the methodology for rating each of the properties and giving everyone more or less a guide for how we can go out and actually do our evaluations. And then over the 2 months following that, I think we would request everybody to go out and actually look at each of the properties, go out there, get your feet on the ground, make sure you're familiar with them, and do the ratings that way.
This is all within town borders, correct? This is not including outside of town borders.
That's correct.
And there were only, 7 remaining?
Yeah.
From our list, so 2/3 of them are off the original list. So it won't be that big of a task to go look at each one of those.
Yep. And we can just kind of casually bring up during the board dinner to see if there is any appetite to even look at properties.
Number one.
Yeah.
That first agenda item.
Yeah, to see if there is any appetite to look at properties outside the town borders that would still be of highly beneficial value to the town. So I mean, this was what the idea that we came up with. Does anybody have any changes or any better ideas they want to add to that? I mean, it's not going to be the three of us running this. It's just helping push it along. So if anybody has anything they want to throw in, by all means.
I think it's impressive, and I love it, and I wish I had something to critique, but it sounds really great.
Is it going to include how land is currently zoned?
How land is currently zoned.
Because, for instance, that land behind Discovery Park is not currently zoned for anything other than commercial. So if we're going to put something in there that is for sale, that is zoned a certain way, we may want to highlight that and also bring that up at the board meeting.
So we did talk about that, and what we decided was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but that we wanted to do this pass first that we suggest, and then look at if there were any other properties that we might consider requesting a change to zoning or discussion along those lines.
In the current format, it does list the zoning of the properties, so.
But has that changed, do you know, since the report?
The most recent thing came from the comprehensive plan that was done in 2011, and the best that does is give the town's view of optimal use, and I think they do include the current zonings in that as well. But it kind of gives an idea. I think specifically the challenge on this property you're referring to is that it had gone through a PD process, so that's in addition to the zoning issue. Another hurdle is there would have to be an amendment to that PD. And then beyond that, I don't know that that's for sale anymore. I think last time I drove by, that for sale sign.
Well, it blew over.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Okay. So I think it's something that we can certainly circle back on and figure out. I think trying to figure out how many of those properties exist, or if it is just the one next to Discovery, is something we'll have to do.
Yeah, that's one of our next month tasks.
Yeah.
Is figuring out, are there other properties like that that could be on it? Because you're right, like even some of the, like the level 3 property is something we want to acquire, but it is owned and it's not for sale, but it's on the list, so certainly that might be one that we need to add to the list that just says this is a property in town. So that makes it 8, because I don't think it was on the list. So we can add that one and.
Yep.
My only point I was going to add was just, I think that compiling this list and looking back to what it was is telling. It's the direction, that we're moving. There's just not much left out there. And so I think that puts a greater burden on us to say what's important when it comes up, and is it worth overreaching or overspending because we're down to 7 parcels or something like that. So, I do think it's a necessary step for when one of these comes available, so we can look and say, here's what we had 10 years ago, here's what we have now. If we don't do it, we may not have a choice 10 years from now.
Yep.
So,
And even beyond that, when all those ratings were done, there's been a lot of development since then. What was important then might be completely different because now there's development sitting in front of it or something like that. So I think going back and redoing all that, it's going to be really important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ken, have you guys considered any sort of, just because this is what I ran on, any sort of community outreach to see what the public thinks about this topic? The only reason I say that is there's been a lot of things that the board has seen recently regarding the Zaharias property. And so I just didn't know whether that was something that, even if you put a Facebook post out and just said, hey, what are your thoughts? I know it wouldn't be very scientific, and I know you guys are all very well steeped in this, but sometimes it never hurts to ask what people think.
Well, some of these properties have just been priced out of our reach. Zaharias has been prohibitively expensive, which is why we haven't been able to pursue that.
I think that's a valid point, then. It's certainly something that would add even more value to what we're putting out there. If we do put out something to the public to solicit opinions or anything like that.
Well, I think we could definitely look at adding, we've had our nice trail map that Allison did for all the events last year, and we should certainly look at the 7 or 8 that are left and get those sort of put on a map as well, to say these are the properties that could be acquired. We'd have to be careful, because some of them are owned by people who live
And I think
in
it would,
town, so you try to be careful.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I think we've done in the last year when people have come by is just explaining to people how much land level 3 actually owns behind South Colton, Rock Creek houses. That usually is something that when you explain it to people were unaware that was the case. They assumed that was town-owned open space, so that's been good to do that. But we can certainly, I think the way we did trails last year, to your community outreach, if we don't want to necessarily have a night, come down on a specific night, we could at least do some of it at Arbor Day, 4th of July, Chili Fest.
I do like the
There's
idea
another one in
of like
Trails Day, yeah, Trails Day. Thank you. I'm like, there's another one in there.
an email survey of some sort after you guys have everything done and then after we've looked at everything, only because that puts it in writing and gives you a little more data than people
Yep, no, definitely.
half-heartedly, oh yeah, listening while they're going to get cotton candy or whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think-
Well, I think that's a good idea, I think.
That's my take on it.
Yeah, I think everyone can kind of keep this in the back of your mind over the next month, and I'd say let's kind of refine at our next meeting what we'd want to do with the community outreach and how we want to do it. Because, yeah, that'll give us even better data points. Okay. The next topic is the Jeff and Paige concert and the fun Sean's been having trying to line up a food vendor.
Yeah.
Sean?
We're doing sampling.
Yeah, oh boy, that'd be much more enjoyable. No, so I reached out initially to Wayne's Barbecue, as we had discussed at the last meeting, and they came back and said they were already committed for another catering event that day. So in parallel with reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce, which I believe was your idea, Trish, I also reached out to Old Chicago. And then through the Chamber of Commerce, she connected me with Chick-fil-A, the manager over there. And Chick-fil-A looked into their corporate policies, and apparently they can only do events that are of a certain size or larger. And our 100 to 200 did not meet that criteria. So I'm wondering if that is also going to be the case with any kind of corporate type of Old Chicago, Pizza Hut, all these big chain places. So I'm not quite sure. The other thing was also the upfront cost. The upfront cost of securing a vendor. They all wanted some type of money, it sounded like, up front, and Allison looked back in her records and saw that just a food truck was, one particular food truck was, $450?
Well, I just looked it up on that website that I sent to you
Oh.
guys to, kind of look through the food trucks. They all have different policies, but I would say the majority of them say, okay, we'll come out for 4 hours. If we don't make X, then you have to reimburse us the gap.
So,
Can I ask, what was the goal, since I missed that? Just to find any food vendor for Jeff and Paige?
Yeah, just to enhance the
Yeah.
event, to provide food.
Okay. We were married less than a year ago, and we had a couple food trucks, and we did them on the cheap, so I can give you that information if that's helpful. But were you trying to find a local Superior
We
vendor?
were,
Yeah,
yeah.
they weren't, I
trying
think they
to-
were Broomfield or something.
I think we've almost run the course on that, though. I mean, that
Yeah.
worked with this Chamber of Commerce. You reached out to people. I mean, I think at this point it's.
I don't know. Allison, do you have something?
The other suggestion was brought up by Trustee Lasis, which I thought was also a feasible idea, and that is just to get like some type of ice cream or dessert truck, because it is only an hour, but I don't know.
Oh. The other suggestion by the Chamber of Commerce, Heather over there, was that if we were to find like a Cub Scout troop or some kind of fundraiser group that wanted to raise money, we could bring them in without having all the usual criteria of meeting certain sizes, et cetera. I don't know.
Overhead involved.
Yeah, the overhead but I don't know of any group that would necessarily want to do that.
June, when's
Okay,
the date?
further out.
June
16th?
16th, I think.
So Girl Scout sales are over by then. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah.
June 6th, 17th, 16th, yeah.
So the boys, the scout groups. I mean, that is a great idea.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a soccer club or, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. I don't know all the different groups in town. But
I know there's a lot of youth hockey across the street. I have several coworkers that drive for miles for their kids at the new sports
table.
I guess the question is, does anybody on the committee have any connections to these groups that they might want to fill them out to see if there's any interest in doing this?
And then if we wanted to have a financial commitment to one of these places, how much are we wanting to?
I would say if we don't go down the Cub Scout route, then the question is, do we are we okay going forth and putting in that financial commitment
Right.
with the understanding that it might not, we might have to put some money in at the end if they don't make enough? Doesn't sound like many of us have these connections.
Well, we
I
have
mean-
the connection for the Boy Scouts, because that's
Yeah.
Doug and Kat Denweiler, and we have that both from the Monarch Butterfly. My boys are Scouts, but I'm thinking, it's not popcorn time for them, so what could you do? Maybe you could get tubs of ice cream and do something like that, like scoop out ice cream, but I don't know that they would want to do that, and I don't know what the rules are, like, health. What?
Yeah, you could.
Well, what about like one of the
Girls
school
over and,
PTOs?
you know.
Is that something one of the schools would want to, I mean, it's not during school session, but is that something Eldo
Yeah.
or Superior would want to,
Yeah, we
I don't
could
know.
do that, yeah.
schools are always looking for money.
I think the hard part is unlike, Asti Park, which has grills, I don't think there's grills up at
The new park.
the new
Mhm.
park.
They
Is
yet
there
to be
grills? Yeah, so,
We could haul our, I mean, we
Yeah.
could haul our grills over. Someone could put them in the back of the truck and
yeah.
bring them over if we needed to.
Well, I can reach out, I mean, we got Doug's
Yeah.
email, we can reach out to him, see if that's something they're interested in. And then, if they say no, do you have connections with the PTO? Is that somebody we'd want to reach out to? Is that something that they would
I
do?
with the Superior Elementary.
Okay.
PTA.
Or, yeah,
Fairly
PTA.
connected with that.
PTA,
I think.
PTO.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Anyway.
government.
El Dorado's a PTO.
Public Trademark Office.
Superior's a PTA, right?
Yeah, so you're right.
Yeah.
It's both.
Okay. I'm not going crazy.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, are there issues there, though? I mean, at a town event, can private citizens serve food, and is there any liability with that?
I can check into that.
Yeah.
I know that, for example, at Chili Fest, we have groups that man the tents and hand out water and things like that. So it seems like there's some type of precedent for it.
Okay.
Okay,
I mean,
that'd be great.
I think for the gap of the food truck, if we pick the right food truck, we're not going to hit a gap. Like if it's ice cream or something, like you're going to make it, like they should make it. If it's something that's a little bit more not mainstream, then you might have some danger of not making it. But really, if it's a quick, I mean, they just have to be quick on getting it.
Yeah, the dessert one is a good idea. It's a kid's event.
Got to imagine Sweet Cow would be there in a second.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. If we want to go outside our borders, we could look
Yeah.
into
Sweet
it.
Cow is kind of expensive though for their food truck, but I have seen them at concerts over in Louisville, so maybe they have some type of town arrangement or something that they would give us. Even though it's not the town, it's close.
They were at like kindergarten kickoff.
Mhm.
I was going to say, they've been at the schools too, and there's a
Jeez.
Jamba Juice truck
Oh.
as well that has
Yeah.
come out to, because I'm thinking, because it's only an hour, so I don't know, if it's not something like hot dogs or something that can move, I mean, these food trucks, these are their business, so they know how to.
But is there any, the concert's an hour. but
Yeah.
Is there any reason that the ice cream truck could be there for an hour after the concert, right?
Or
Oh, yeah,
before.
no, definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Before and
it's
after.
like a half hour, hour before, and half hour, hour after.
Mhm.
So you're really looking for the, like, they could be there for the 3 hours or until they sell out. And then they're-
Mm-hmm.
um,
So, sounds like there's actually a lot of enthusiasm for the dessert type truck. Do we want to just explore that idea first before we reach out to? I mean, is that a better idea than reaching out to the local groups?
Do you need someone to sample different?
I got that covered now.
It might be, and it sounds like if you've done this work for your wedding with the local, I mean, I think we're at the point that there's not really food trucks within the town of Superior.
Yeah,
I
it-
think you've done your due diligence of trying to get a local business to do it.
And Allison provided a website that has pretty much a listing of all the food trucks.
Yeah.
So we can go through there, look at the dessert ones, we can figure out which ones have the smallest amount of
Over-
required, yeah. I guess what we need to know is what amount is the committee comfortable with committing to for a required amount?
What does the concert cost?
It doubled, right?
It's almost
$1,000.
$1,000.
Almost $1,000.
Also, just FYI, that we just looked at the Sweet Cow Truck website, and basically you just submit a form to inquire. It looked super easy to figure out how much it would be.
I'll send you that information of how much it costs. Because we did submit a form.
For Sweet Cow?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, it's contingent on the location, the date, the time. So it may be good for someone to fill that form out with the specifics, because it looks like they were kind of, it just depended on maybe their
Well, I mean, another option might be to get Safeway to, half price something for one of the PTAs or one of the groups to just sell prepackaged ice cream. Could be easy, because then you don't have the food prep, anything, or handling anything, just little cups, and that could work. Yeah, or
Yeah.
bars, or something prepackaged is easy.
It's true.
Yeah, or down to Costco, same thing.
Oh, yeah, or
Go to
Costco, right.
Costco for
Costco, yeah.
200 ice cream sandwiches or something.
Mhm. I bet you they would even donate it. There's a chance they would.
That's okay, 'cause they're local.
Yeah, and they might donate it to, if it's for the PTA or for the Scouts or something, they might.
Okay, so we're back to wanting to reach
Well,
out.
I guess if it's for the PTA, that'd be up to you guys. You're the ones on the boards.
I don't know if I mean, I'm happy to do it, and I could find out soon on my end, but I don't care that much.
Well,
I mean, we could investigate it.
Yeah.
I could ask to see, I mean,
I
they
mean,
might say it's
I'll reach
summer
out to
and
Sweet Cow.
everybody's out.
I'll
and-
fill out the form for Sweet Cow and
Let's
see
do
what they
that.
say.
Okay.
And you
If you want
guys,
to
if you want to follow up
inquire.
with Costco or Safeway or whatever.
And the only restriction that we're going to run into is if we are going to do this, it'd be great to get on the marketing material to bring in even more people than we
When is
normally
that? When is the deadline for that?
do. Yeah.
Did it already pass?
as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
I think February 15th is kind of our D-Day for marketing for summer programs and things, but that's for, print material and things. That doesn't mean there aren't other venues that, like the CAC, the newsletters, the, different stuff, but it would be nice to have it as quickly as possible so it could get in all the print materials, that are sent out.
Okay, so if you guys all want to just jump on that.
And
I mean, that's what I would do,
My
'cause I
wife's
don't-
involved, so I can find out pretty quickly on my end.
Cool. And if you guys just want to shoot out emails afterwards.
Yep.
And try to figure that out.
Yeah, and
It's
if-
the 17th, right? 16th?
The 16th. And potentially, whatever ends up happening through who's ever contacts, if it can be kind of like a precise or maybe a logo might be helpful if they want a little bit of advertisement in it, or, a descriptor that they use for marketing, whoever ends up.
Mhm.
And I can make sure it's kind of tweaked and included. A high-res file is always the best for this type of material.
All right. The next update item was the Shan Shan property. Did you want to just touch base with the emails that?
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, so, let me just bring up the email real quick here, if I can find it. So I had.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, you got it. Okay, so Matt and I had done a little discussion via email that had to do with our priorities with the Shan Shan property and how we kind of saw things going. And I guess Matt actually met with the town manager.
Yeah.
When did you do that?
He didn't give me the date that they did that.
Okay. Yeah, so he talked with Matt, and let's see, haven't heard if the developer is going to proceed with a planned development for the property to the south of the Shan Shan property.
That's the Rogers Farm property.
Yeah, which is right. This is important because we will need to coordinate with them, since we would likely need a portion of their property for the frontage road we're talking. If we're not going to proceed with the PD, then we will need to work with them as we go through the planning process for the possible trail ahead.
Yeah. And that all comes back to the discussions we had earlier this year of if we're going to do a trailhead, it would really make sense if we can put it off of the roundabout that's currently going in, and we'd have to use some of their land for a frontage road to get there. So, sounds like it's a lot of hurry up and wait to see if they're going to put forth a PD, and even if they don't, we'll still have to work with them. So. So Shane Shan. And then we had one additional update item that we wanted to add. National Trails Day, we haven't dug into that yet. We'll add that to next month's agenda so we can start the planning on it. But we have a opportunity that's only available for a little while because it's tied to Valentine's Day. But we have different shirt styles this year. Let's see, this is the three-quarter one, the unisex one. So here's, if you guys want to hit the lights real quick. So
Last one. Last one.
Far left.
Yep.
There you go.
Mhm. Oh, no,
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 no, no.
no.
Ah. Yep.
Yeah. So it's a little it's a little cool, like more intricate of a logo, a little bit nicer of a shirt than normal. On the back, there it is. On the back, it's still promoting the American Hiking Society, which is the people that sponsor National Trails Day. And then the proceeds still go to the National, or the American Hiking Society, right, Allison? Yep. So this is still well within our typical desire to support this organization, and we always try to get shirts so it's easy to tell us all apart when we're actually at the event, since we've been getting up to 300 people. So I think it'd be great if we did these shirts this year. I think they're a little bit nicer, and it's kind of a nice thing for the group as well.
Does the color?
Yeah.
That's your prize for, is it just gray or is it?
Nope, so there's gray, there's green, there's purple, there's blue, and there's white.
Nice.
I guess
And
the
the
question.
price doesn't change?
No, the price didn't change. It's $25 for each of them.
There's also different styles in here too.
Yeah, so there's a regular T-shirt, there's youth, there's the three-quarter, if you want to do that. Women's slim and long sleeve tee. My thought is this is the middle of the summer. When
Yeah.
it's normally really hot. I'm thinking that we'd probably just want to go with the regular premium or the regular unisex.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did.
Yeah.
The shirts from last year were good.
Yeah.
In the sense of the weight of them.
The
and stuff.
material
They
was much
weren't
better.
Like, yeah, they were better than, I
And
like this one.
I'm pretty sure this is a similar material.
Yeah, nice.
So I guess my question is, do we all want to agree on a color, or do we want to just say whatever color you like? I think it's okay we choose our own, to be honest, but
Yeah, I can see a little bit of a benefit, especially as you're at an event with 300 people, that, oh, you go see that other guy in the green shirt.
Yeah,
or
that's
something
true.
like
Yeah, something
I
that
mean,
stands out.
I do think having colors probably a good thing versus just the standard issue gray, but.
Agreed.
Can we
You
all,
wanna stand
can we
up?
all agree on one color?
What's the blue look like?
There's the blue.
That green is the color of the year, according to Fashion
I like the green.
I don't.
Green, then we
Yeah.
just have to give, the sizes are unisex, right? So we usually geared towards more men's sizes, right?
And everybody can send you their sizes.
Yeah, it's
Through email.
yeah, size and fabric info. So if anyone does want to look at the exact sizes, so
But I think last year-
do we want to vote, or does everyone like green? Do we have enough people who want the green that's what we're all going with?
Either green or blue.
Green.
Either one.
Yeah, I'm good with green and blue. I like these shirts. I think it's a good idea. I just saw mine from last year in my drawer when I was getting ready for the meeting.
I wear mine all the time. So, Andy, you said you're good with green or
blue.
okay. Ryan, do you have a preference?
Green.
It
Green.
was a better.
Patricia, green or blue preference?
Green, I like the green.
Done.
Green it is.
Green it
All right.
is.
So,
Send Allison your size.
We're fashionable.
these are only available for 10 more days. So we need to move on this. So everybody send your sizes to Allison
Right. Oh, I have-
ASAP. Yeah, I can't get on it either.
What's going on? You on internet? I can't get on.
I couldn't get on the
It's
guest one. Are
I
you-
was looking at Sweet Cow and everything, but I'm on the
Network.
Oh,
Yeah.
We're on the guest.
The guest one isn't working for some
Not
reason right
working.
now.
I don't even know the password either. It was like set up for me.
You just come in.
Perfect.
Do you mind just pulling the size up and we can just stare at it for a minute, but you can keep talking.
Yeah, so there it is. So I'm not sure I have much more to keep talking about, but yeah. So everyone just today, tomorrow,
Let Allison know.
shoot Allison an email with your size,
You could call me too.
or you can call her.
XL.
Allison, do you have any left over from last year? Because Tracy was just saying she didn't have hers, and I thought we might have had one that might be stuffed in a box in your office.
Well, call me. I can look, but I don't know. It could have been in the stuff that went out there. I don't know.
That's
And-
what I'm wondering, because I think we all put them, we either got them that.
Yeah, I can't remember.
before, or got them there or whatever, so it might be that yours is in somewhere.
It could be in our storage facility, which is very organized, and I could find it right away.
The only other thought I had is we're down one member right now. So should we get an extra and just guess at a size?
I would just get an extra large or
Oh.
an extra, or.
Another
One,
large.
Yeah.
another large.
Yeah,
like
another large.
And then just say,
This, we'll give that to whoever's.
yeah.
Yeah, so Allison, can you use that?
Assuming we don't merge and shrink our numbers.
At this point, we have to assume that, assume it's going to be status quo. Honestly, I mean, this is
Yeah.
the whole merger thing is complicated.
It's-
I don't see it moving
Discussed
incredibly fast if
previously.
it happens at all, so.
I have two quick updates that I added really quick, kind of last minute. One of them was that Boulder County Youth Corps, I know that the group wanted to remain updated on larger items that were going to be part of the open space budget, which the town has been working with Boulder County Youth Corps since the 90s, and their amount always comes out of the open space maintenance budget. And that amount this year is $27,500, which will be going to the town board for approval for the contract that we have done every year.
And that goes to the board on Monday, right?
Correct.
Yep.
And
We
then
usually do trail work over the summer, like it gives teenagers jobs over the summer, but they do a lot of trail work and things like that.
Right, install water bars, crush your fine, pull noxious weeds, fix cement pads under some of the picnic tables out on the trails, just a lot of different jobs. And what you could do is you could even go back and, well, going forward, you could watch out for the Youth Corps proclamations, and the different cover memos will tell you everything that they accomplished in the year. So that's kind of neat to look at the end of the summer when their job's finished, that you can see how many miles of trails or how many tons of crusher fines they spread out. So it's pretty exciting.
And their supervisor from town staff last year won the award for.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Frickin.
Yeah, best I don't know if it was best supervisor or something out of their whole corps through the county.
And then the other thing is Trail F. I know the group was interested in those costs. And so the construction amount was approximately $74,000. And the total that's been spent on expedited, including the construction, is $123,000.
Across all the trails?
Correct. So for the, that would include the construction of Trail F and all the design and construction management. And so if you break that out, it's $50,000, which was 100% of the complete design of Trail F, 90% of design for D and G, and construction management of Trail F. So the way it gets billed out, because it's different contractors, that's why I'm breaking it out for you, because you'll have the design and management piece of it, and then you have the construction piece with another firm. And so the total amount
I see.
for the design and the evaluation of all the trails, you know, is the 50,000 amount.
Yep.
The construction of F is 74,000, and then the total amount. So it's hard to really break it out, the design and management for each trail, because when they bill, the design often gets lumped, kind of intermarried together, so.
Cool.
Can I get a copy of that? I just wanted to put that in that continuity document that we have. Now that it's finished, we said we wanted to put the construction costs when a trail gets done in there.
Yeah, and I'll have it in our notes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. That's all I need.
It could be broken out more, but I'm not sure how much more.
I don't know how important that is. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
I think we can get pretty close.
Okay.
So thank you.
Sure.
One more thing I was wondering about. I was wondering about what is the status of the trail connector to Mayhofer from that, I can never remember the name of the development over by Target.
Coal Creek
Thank
Crossing.
you. Coal Creek Crossing. Where do we stand with that?
So, that is still under consideration, and the town is working with Boulder County. I think there may be some more evaluation of fauna out there, with someone from Boulder County maybe having to like look at some species of orchid or something.
So under consideration. Nothing has happened.
We're waiting, it's pending approval from Boulder County.
Is there anything that would keep it from going through besides potentially fauna? I guess. Is it still look like it's going to go through?
I guess it could be a possibility, but until we get their final answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
We wouldn't know that.
The intention is to have it built. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, does anyone else have anything for the good of the order? All right. Meeting adjourned.
I've also heard RFQs, that might just be something that we use in my office. Yeah. They all appreciate one huge contract. That's generally.
Oh, yeah.
Have a good night. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. This was quite informative for me. And you guys raised a lot of great points on the merger thing that I never thought about.
Yeah, well, the dogs are, according to Ashley, that's who gets bit most.
There's a lot that needs to be considered in all of
There's
this.
no easy fix on it.
No, it's
And
not.
some of that that I passed on,
When my daughter, that I had, some dogs are very curious and like don't take it, they're very, I can go and, oh,
Trying to figure out how to.
yeah, eat brown, I should really get close to you. Figure out what that is, like they don't take any of the clues. Like, some do, but some are.
Yeah. Well, you know, but I think they raised a lot of good points. She definitely raised some for me, and I was like, oh, yeah, these were all very fair. There were a lot of good points.
See what happens.
Thank you. It'll be a long time.
Yes, it will.
Hi,
You
Allison.
know, I can see that being on many a
How's it going?
retreat.
Good. What's up? No, you're looking good. Did you come here for your
I don't know, it's like this year.
It does look different. I couldn't figure out what
It's
looked
straight
different.
because I had.
Maybe that's what it is.
Afro.
It's straight.
When I put it back with my wedding. Straighten it.
Yeah, so maybe